And one of the number one things you can do as a leader is if you really want to push decision-making down and you want to establish stronger relationships with people, if you're a leader today, every single answer to a question you get asked, it should be the same answer back. And if someone says, I don't know whether we should go with option A or B, I don't say, hey, it's option A and let them go. I ask them back, what do you think? It's the number one thing you can do is, what do you think? And then the person goes, hey, then that tells you as a leader, they're not confident in that decision. Maybe they're a little scared. They're going to say the wrong thing to you, or they don't know the factors behind it. So you would then say as a leader, and you have to have time to do this, you would say, what are the factors you take into account to make that decision? If you know there's 4 and they tell you 3, you would tell them the 4th one, but then you don't say that's why it's option A. As a leader, you pause and you say, knowing those are the 4 factors, what decision should we make? And they say option A. And then you say, fantastic. In the future, if it's less than $75, I want you to make that decision every single day. If it's above it, just come to me with what your thoughts are. That is true leadership today. You can't do any of that if you're working 80% in the business and don't have time, like 6 seconds, tell someone, 3 or 4 minutes to actually transfer your decision-making down.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Leading with Integrity. And this week, I'm joined by my next guest, Marc Koehler, who is a leadership consultant, an executive coach, a speaker, and a former nuclear submarine officer. So we'll be hearing his experiences, his take on leadership, lessons he learned, lessons he was taught about leadership, life, the workplace, and more from his military experience and beyond. We'll be covering key topics like decision-making, team dynamics, purpose, corporate culture, employee engagement, confidence, and more. There's so many crucial aspects of leadership that we'll be covering in this conversation. And Marc shares some powerful stories to underline the points as well. So I know you're going to get loads out of this. I hope you enjoyed as well. And do listen to the end or check those show notes for links to learn more and to join my Integrity Leaders online community. And that's enough from me. Let's welcome Marc to the show.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Marc, welcome to Leading with Integrity. Great to have you on the show. Looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, David, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. And I was going to say I'm going to push you into the deep end, but given your career history, you probably thrive on that, don't you? So, yeah, tell us a bit about yourself, your career so far, what you do today, why you do it.
Yeah, so again, my name is Marc Koehler. I'm a founder of a company called Lead with Purpose, and also Marc Koehler Speaks. And I'm passionate about helping people lead more purposeful and inspiring lives. And it's by giving people a set of skills and tools so they can have tremendous readiness in their lives. Not only individual readiness to handle any situation that comes their way, but also how do you have collective readiness? And these things that I was exposed to are not only great for business, they're great for your family, they're great for your community. And so that's what we're really passionate about. We wake up every single day. How do we help people lead more purposeful and inspiring lives? And, for me, just a little background on me. I was born in Rochester, New York. I grew up there. In 1986, I was a junior at the State University of New York at Fredonia. It's an hour south of Buffalo, studying physics. And this little known movie comes out called Top Gun. I don't know if you've heard of it, but anyways, I saw it the first 4 days that it was out every day. And the 5th day, I was in the recruiting office in Buffalo, New York, to become a jet fighter pilot. Go through all the tests that day, David, to become a jet fighter pilot. Sitting there at the end of the day, recruiter comes out and says, you did fantastic on all the tests, with the exception of one. We have to have you retaken. I was like, well, what is it? Did I not see the horizon right? Am I colorblind? And he goes, no, your thigh bone is 3/8 of an inch too long to sit in a jet. Now, this is hard to look at, and you can't tell this, David. I'm 6'5". So we retake the test, get it down to within 1/8 of an inch, I get disqualified. I leave the recruiting station. I'm crushed. I'm 21 years old, crushed. I'm not going to be a jet fighter pilot, serve my country and be maverick, right? As I'm leaving the recruiting station, the recruiter must have needed one more recruit that month. He was throwing everything at me. What about helicopter pilot? I was like, no. What about SEAL team? No. Surface ship? No. And he says, what about elite nuclear submarine force? And I think somehow the word elite like turned my head around. I said, send me some information on it. Send me some information on it. And I was a combination of intrigued, but also very intimidated. And I said, hey, I think I want to give that a shot. And so I always go back to that recruiter. Like, I'm 6'5". How do you get a 6'5" guy in a nuclear submarine where I hit my head a ton? Amazing. But I had some, fantastic experiences. I was 25 years old, helping to lead 110 crew members, missions critical to national security, average age 23 years old, 10 months of the year underneath the surface of the ocean. Loved all of that, but I didn't love being out at sea 80% of the year. And so after 5 missions at sea, I left the Navy. I took a quick stop at Honeywell. Loved everything about Honeywell, training that they gave me, but they were steeped in red tape and took forever to make a decision. So when my children, 3 daughters, were 8, 6, and 4, I wanted to be at every back to school night, choir performance, and soccer practice. And I jumped off to do strategic management consulting, and I fell into doing turnaround work. In doing that turnaround work, I would go into companies that were struggling. I tried to take the tools that I learned at Honeywell and apply them to the companies, and I found out I made them worse. And so David, I went back to my time in the submarine force with either nothing to lose or everything to lose. I just decided to bring those tools forward. And over a 2-decade period, I became a sought-after turnaround CEO. And it's because of the framework that I developed called Fast Attack Leadership. We're going to delve into that a little bit today. I'll share thoughts on that. But it's the 5-step framework that nuclear submarine officers use on top secret missions. It's what anyone can learn so they can create fully aligned, highly adaptable, world-class teams that execute the highest level and execute and navigate your team in a dynamically changing world. So that's what we're really passionate about is sharing the $1 million of training that the Navy put in me to be a leader. I love sharing that. And a couple other things. I've been married for 30 years, and my wife and I, we raised 3 daughters. And I can tell you that you can imagine being underneath the surface of the ocean, leading teams on missions critical to national security is one of the most stressful leadership positions in the world. But raising 3 daughters, I got to tell you, that is the most stressful situation in the world. Now, we're past all the stuff with teenage years and they're out there crushing it. But we live in Southern California, and I love watching soccer, which is I know you in the UK you call it football, but that's a little background on me.
Okay, wow, quite the journey then. So you're not the first former service member, or even the only former Navy service member I've met who has cited Top Gun as the reason for joining up. Not even just exclusive to Americans either. That film has a lot to answer for, doesn't it? In a good way. It's just like part of the culture, I guess, isn't it? Some films just do that.
I don't know if the Navy knew this. It was the greatest recruiting marketing piece they could ever have put out. And, Top Gun 2 came out. That was, I thought it was a fantastic sequel to it. So.
Yeah, I think they probably did know, but they definitely did for the sequel, didn't they?
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't have happened without the Navy's participation, would it? I mean, you can't film something like that without, so especially not back then, before CGI and all these other technologies.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, amazing film. Yeah, I don't think I know anyone who doesn't know off by heart either.
Yeah, it's iconic film.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, being 6'5", I can imagine that must be quite a painful experience on a submarine. Yeah.
Luckily, I'm tall enough so people can't see the divots.
I was going to say, have you got a permanent dent?
Permanent dents in my head. So
yeah, it's interesting. So there's one other submariner that I've met who was in the Royal Navy. He's actually a relative of my wife's, and he's really tall as well. So I'm not sure. I'm like 6'1", 6'2", and he's good half a head taller than me. So there must be something about it. Maybe they're all wanted to be fighter pilots and couldn't.
I think the recruiter that got me in probably went over to England and got him in too or something. He must have wrangled him.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, okay. So let's talk a bit more then about this idea of elite leadership. I mean, you're pretty well placed, I think, to talk about high-performing teams and what makes those teams function most effectively from a leadership perspective. So from your experiences, I mean, can you talk about some of the decision-making patterns you think that go behind that sort of leadership?
Yeah. So what I would share is that what we've seen is that many organizations and leaders are using a set of skills and tools and a framework that's built for a world that no longer exists. A slower, less disruptive world. And so what we know is that leaders deep down, they want to be successful, but they're using a framework that they've been used to using in the past, and it's not working, but they don't know what to jump to. So they just continue to stay with that. And the biggest challenge that all of us are having today is that the speed of business just continues to accelerate and continues to get faster and faster. Today is the fastest day that you've ever experienced in your life, and it's the slowest day for the rest of your life. And so when you think about it continuing to go forward, the big, myth or thing that people continue to try to use is that they feel that they have to be involved in every single decision. And that's not your role as the leader anymore. Working in the business, and the best way for me to explain it to you, and if it's in Britain or this is being listened to worldwide, it's like you being a great player on the soccer pitch. You have to find a way to transition yourself so you're the coach on the sideline. You can't go into the field of play, and you have to figure out how do you find success through others. So a lot of times what we find is you're the best person in the sales team. You get elevated to be the leader of that team. Now it's not you being in the game, it's you being on the sideline and helping others to achieve that. So what we find is that a lot of leaders have a struggle and feel like I have to have every single answer. And so if you're listening to this is what we typically see. And again, that's not your role anymore. So that's the biggest challenge that we see is people feel they have to be involved in every single decision. And just to give you an example, in the submarine force, are you familiar, David, with working in the business and working on the business?
Indeed, yes.
Yes, indeed. So what percentage of time, I'll just ask you this, what percentage of time do you think the captain of a submarine is involved in the daily operations of a U.S. nuclear submarine?
I mean, I'd guess it's probably lower than we think.
Yeah, it's less than 1%.
Wow.
Yeah. Although the captain of a U.S. nuclear submarine knows every answer to every single situation that comes up, it's about how do you teach everyone at every single layer how to become a great individual decision maker so they have individual readiness. And once you teach everyone that great individual readiness, then together you can have collective readiness. So when something comes up that you can't handle, you can tap into the collective genius of your team to help solve problems in that exchange. So I think the biggest, one takeaway, the biggest challenge is your role is not to have all the answers and be involved in every single decision. Your role is to be a facilitator of knowledge and experience and to pull teams together. And you yourself need to know when you need to lead. Even if you're the CEO of the company, you need to know that there's going to be times where someone else has an expertise and you have to learn how to follow and then support them and have the, be confident enough to go like, hey, I'm going to allow someone else to lead. So I think in decision-making, we say in the submarine force, the submarine that's going to win was the one that made the most smart decisions the fastest.
Mm.
It's the same in business today. Most smart decisions the fastest isn't you at the top making all the decisions and pushing those down. It's about teaching everyone at every layer to become a great decision maker.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomena, I guess is the word. This kind of the top-down autocratic sort of thinking. And it's way more common in businesses than I think it should be. And we talk, it's also interesting, someone with a military background too, because from the outside of those organizations, the perception a lot of the rest of us have is that that's how they work, that it's strict hierarchy and top down and boss says the thing and it just trickles down. But yeah, I mean, having spoken to a few other former military personnel myself as well, I do hear that story quite often. People shake their heads when I say that. And it's like, no, that's not it at all, apart from maybe like very limited set of circumstances.
Yeah, there's two, David, there's actually two organizations we have. We have the typical hierarchy. That's for the administrative aspect of the submarine. So we need the maintenance done. So the mechanical division is going to do it. Here's the process they're going to follow, and someone's got to be qualified, and this is the person who's going to do it. We had that. When we were doing operations, it was matrix. It was a matrix. And so you had to shift between these two mindsets of going, hey, we got to follow a process, the 11 steps of the process to a T, needed that admin, but then we needed to free ourselves up to go like, hey, you're an expertise, you have an expertise, you have an expertise. Hey, let's bring all those together in a matrix. You lead it. And then what we'll do is we'll get a solution and then we'll unform the team. And so it's the ability to form a team, solve a problem, and then unform a team. So it's two, you're right. We typically see on the screen, the Marine Corps general said, climb the mountain, and everyone's just following exactly what they do. And that's really not the truth.
Yeah, it's easy to blame film and TV for that, isn't it? I was going to ask you another random question that popped into my head was, how did the Navy that you served in compare to the Navy that you saw in Top Gun that made you join up?
So the Navy that I saw in Top Gun, so I saw a total different part of the Navy than I thought I was going to see. Yeah. No, that's okay. but what happened was I made that 1/8 of an inch decision. Like I wouldn't be in Southern California right now. I'd probably be somewhere, I'd probably be in Florida near, at the Top Gun, all of these different things. So, but when I signed up, I really underestimated, how fast we had to learn. Like I didn't see a submarine for 18 months. So we were onboarding for 18 months. And, first 6 months is getting a master's in nuclear engineering. Typically takes 18 months to do that. And this is second only to MIT in the world of the quantity and quality of what you have to learn, physics and reactor chemistry and all that stuff. Instead of doing it in 18 months, we did it in 6 months. There were two reasons for that. They wanted to get us to the fleet as fast as possible. But what they were teaching us was how do we learn at speed? Yeah. And that was a tremendously powerful skill, David, to have, because today, what is it about? Something new is going to happen today that we don't know anything about. How do we learn at speed what's important and what's not important? And so I think this is some of the foundation. So what did I expect? When I was going into, to be a Top Gun pilot, I expected to be on a motorbike with like a hot chick on the back and, flying off the carrier and all that type of stuff. But what I got myself into when I first stepped into that school, it's super high performance. And the one thing that shocked me too is, although I didn't see a submarine for 16 months, in the submarine force, how you did anything is how you do everything. And so there were times when I first stepped into that school where they said, hey, no, you don't get a second chance to make that decision. And what they were teaching us there too was, hey, when you're 400 feet below the surface of the ocean and you're the closest one to the valve that needs to be turned, you need to know whether it fails open or fails shut, if it's hydraulic operated or electronic operated. And we all need to know, you know that, Mark. And so I think the expectation level, I way underestimated, if I could share that with you. But what they did is, I was young, I was 22 years old. They gave me an expectation of this and I was down here and they helped me to climb the ladder to get there. And so like, I learned a lot about myself. Like if in 12 months, I can go from knowing nothing about nuclear power to be qualified by the Department of Energy to run a nuclear power plant anywhere in the world. Like I didn't get there on my own. They gave me the ladder to get up. So I think the biggest thing that shocked me and helped me to rise up was that level of expectation. And it made sense when I got on board. I mean, you don't get a second chance to make a decision. You can send 129 other people to a watery grave if that happens. So.
Yeah. Well, in that context, it makes sense that you need to learn in that way and that to that depth. Excuse the pun.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And so going back to this kind of this top-down idea, and I guess the question I struggle with a lot actually is why that's such a common thing, because there's plenty of other ways of doing it. A lot of them are pretty well known at this point. So why do you think it is? And we could quite easily like write it off to like CEOs' egos and things like this, but I think that's probably unfair, with a few exceptions, maybe. So why do you think it's still so prevalent?
Yeah. So I think it's been passed down from business generation to business generation. You know, we're talking about 1960s hierarchy structure where there's less chaos, where it's like, hey, David, you work all day and you follow this one process. And then what we do is we see what the quality of the product is that you produce. And so much more now is less about that. And it's more about how do you take a look at information and how do you make a decision of what's happening today. So I think it's been passed down from, a business generation to business generation. I'm not talking about family run businesses. I'm just talking about, we think about the 1960s and 70s all the way to the 80s and 90s and all the way to today. So I still think it's there. Second is this expectation by leaders. When I get put into a leadership role, I think there's still this expectation that they feel that they're serving people and they have to have the answer to every single question they have. And one of the greatest answers you can have back to people is, I don't know. And when you say, I don't know, you allow people to see that you're human. You allow people to see that you have humility. And so there's this huge burden of feeling that I have to have all the decisions, and that's how I'm supposed to lead. Number two is and you already touched upon it. It's this feeling of letting go of control. Oh, if I don't control the situation, I'm going to be responsible for the situation. I gave it to David and he didn't do it exactly like I did, so I just take it back. And then what happens is you don't get to the most smart decisions the fastest. Everything's clogged with where you're at. So that's another piece. And then we already talked about the other one is feeling that you have to stay in this hierarchy type of framework. And that's how we make decisions. More decisions are made at the top. If you think about a typical hierarchy organizational chart, it's got the different departments, right? And then there's lines in between the people. The lines in between the people are represented by status and title and control. More decisions made at the top and pushed down. Way too rigid of a framework to make decisions today. And that's where you have to be able to shift from hierarchy to matrix, like very quickly, and then be able to shift back. So I believe those are the three biggest challenges. And again, one of the number one is the leader unwilling to give up control because they don't think the people underneath them can do the job.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, that question of control, and for me, I've always seen it as it's more about trust than it is about control. And I think there's an aspect there's a certain type of person who finds themselves in those roles who, for whatever reason, just can't bring themselves to trust people to just do the job they've been hired to do.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I mean, there's that kind of that business culture aspect, isn't there? Of, this is the way that my boss did it. That's how he taught me to do it. So it was good enough for me, that whole sort of mentality. But then I don't know. I mean, so for me, from almost as early as I can remember even thinking about leadership or being in charge of people in inverted commas, one of the earliest lessons I remember learning were the two things. One was lead by example. So, exhibit the behaviors you expect from others.
Right.
But the other one was really firmly drummed into me was, if you don't know the answer to something, just say that.
Yeah.
And don't just leave it at that either. Go and find the answer or work together to find the answer and then come back and complete the feedback loop so that we're not just going, don't know the answer and washing our hands of it and disappearing. And there just doesn't seem to be a thing in leadership. From right at the top of national political leadership all the way through down to the first time supervisor in any kind of job really, like a supermarket or something. There's always that thing around, I'm the leader, I need to know the answer. I can't admit I'm wrong. And and it's so damaging. I really struggle with it.
Yeah. So let me share with you a lesson that I had. We call it Empower Jam Dives. And so it's the final qualification watch to earn my coveted submarine gold dolphins. It's a 6-hour watch. I've spent, 26 months studying nuclear power, studying warfare, strategy, and all those things. The 6-hour watch, it's the final one. I'm driving the submarine. And the captain is evaluating me, and he's running every drill scenario on me, every warfare scenario. He can ask me anything from the 200 systems that are working together, ask me to draw it out. How does it work? When will it fail? We're talking about our enemies and what's the characteristics of sound. For the first 5 hours of the watch, I'm doing fantastic. I'm leading the crew through all of these different scenarios. And we start the 6th hour of the watch. We're 400 feet below the surface of the ocean, going all ahead standard, which is about medium speed for a submarine. I'm sitting across the red lit control room, which is extremely cramped. Captain's across the control room, and he says, "Mr. Koehler, come over here." And I have to tell you, David, I got up and I had my arm ready to come out. Like I thought he was going to say, "Congratulations, you qualified and you've earned your dolphins." And he doesn't do that. He says, "All ahead flank." Now, all ahead flank's as fast as a submarine can go. Can't tell you how fast it is, but it's really fast. And the drill monitor takes the stern planes and goes full down on the stern planes. Stern planes in the back of the submarine flop down. It sends 5,000 tons of steel hurtling at a 40-degree down angle towards the bottom of the ocean. This is one of 3 casualties that requires an immediate response by me, the officer of the deck. Because the first 5 hours of the watch has been strenuous, I'm blanking on exactly what I'm supposed to say for this specific situation. That's when the diving officer calmly says, "Passing through 500 feet, Mr. Koehler." Captain looks at me and says, "What are you going to do, Mr. Koehler?" I know the answer's in the back of the control room, but by the time I go back there and come back, we're going to be at crush depth. Diving officer calmly says, "Passing through 600 feet, Mr. Koehler." That's when the captain looks at me and says, "Mr. Koehler, save my submarine and crew." Now, there's another word that was in there that started with an F. You probably understand what it is. But what the captain then saw was my mind was initially blank, but now it's filling up with stress and fear. Diving officer says, "Passing through 700 feet, Mr. Koehler." That's when the captain says, "Attention and control." This is the captain. I have the con, and he says, "Jam dive." So he took control of the submarine from me, and he said the 2 words that I just couldn't come up with. As the submarine's leveling off, coming back up to 400 feet, captain pulls me to the back of the control room, and he and I are together, alone. And he says, "Mr. Koehler, what happened? You were doing so great." I said, "I know, Captain. I've studied that jam dive hundreds of times." And I just blanked. He said, "Okay, that's going to happen." He says, "Where was the answer?" And I said, "It was in the back of the control room, but we would have been at crush depth." He said, "Correct." He says, "But where was the answer?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "You have 9 members of your watch section who are here. Do you think any of them know the answer to this?" And I said, "They probably do." To which he asked me another question. He said, "Why didn't you ask them for a recommendation?" And here's the key point. I replied and I said, "Captain, I'm the one who's supposed to be leading this watch section and leading the entire crew through this scenario. And if I ask them a question, it's going to show them that I don't know the answer. And that's going to make me look like a fool." To which he replied, and he smiled when he said this. He says, "What do you think you look like now?" And he and I had a very strong relationship, David, and for anybody listening. But he followed up and said, "You need to ask them, I need a recommendation here." One of them would have known that you blanked on jam dive. They would have said, "The stern planes are stuck in a jam dive position." You would have heard jam dive. You would have said jam dive. Everything would have been taken care of. The big thing I want you to take from this lesson today, Mr. Koehler, I don't expect you, the U.S. Navy doesn't expect you to have the answer to every situation. That's why we invested in having this world-class team around you. There's going to be times, this is a 4 million components make up the submarine. There's going to be situations that come up you've never had before, and you are going to blank. You need to know that in dynamically changing situations, you need to tap into the collective genius of your team to help solve a problem and manage change. We finished that conversation. We're at 400 feet below the surface of the ocean, going all ahead standard again. Come around to where the crew is and come back to where the watch section is. And the captain says, "Attention and control. This is the captain. Mr. Koehler has the con." Now, I was shocked when he did this. He gave me back control of $1 billion submarine I almost scuttled. And then the next thing he said to me was, "Mr. Koehler, all ahead flank." took the entire submarine through a jam dive scenario again, allowed me to redeem myself for myself, allowed me to redeem myself for the crew. The big lesson that I learned that day, very young, was that it's important to become a great decision maker and great leader. But if you are doing something that's important, if you're operating in dynamically changing environments, you have to have a world-class team around you, because there's going to be times you need to tap into the collective genius of that team to help solve a problem and manage change. Huge learning lesson for me in power jam dives.
Yeah, and it's such a great lesson. I mean, it's a brilliant story, and it is probably the most compelling one I've heard that answers this kind of problem, isn't it, of why you should be able to just say, look, I don't know the answer, why it's okay for leaders to ask for help and leverage the expertise around them in any situation. I mean, that one is probably unique in terms of the level of performance of the team and the level of knowledge that they all had. But I mean, in the average business, most business leaders, team leaders, managers, whatever, have hired a team to do jobs that you either can't or don't want to do yourself. Either way, you've hired them for their expertise. And so, and it boggles my mind sometimes when you see these leaders like, so you've brought on these great experts to do these jobs, and then you're not letting them do the jobs. Right. But why are you wasting your money? Like, just get rid of them if you're going to do it all yourself. But the reason you're not going to do that is because actually, maybe you don't want to admit it, but no one person can do all of the jobs. That's why we have teams, isn't it? It's not the leader's role to do all those things themselves either. Yeah. And yet, so many of us, I mean, I've done that as well. I did it 100 times probably or more throughout my career too. But you do just get stuck in that thing in your head, don't you? Where you're just like, oh, I need to be the one to do this. I need to be seen to do it.
Yes.
And it's such a false picture. And yeah.
Absolutely false. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story as well. Very well told too. There could be a film around that, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember it so well because it was such a powerful lesson for me. So.
Yeah. 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 And so going back again to our conversation about why these older approaches to leadership are so prevalent still, I think another reason, which we maybe touched on, is the leadership development programs and the way that people impart these skills to the next generations, to the future leaders. And I think, again, this is something where so many businesses just don't do it at all. It's kind of on-the-job training, or sink or swim, as I call it. And quite often the ones that do it not the best way. So, I mean, what have you seen? What do you think companies get wrong about this most often?
Yeah. So the first thing that you have to do as a leader is, if you want to push decision-making down, if you want to have people want to be at your business, if there's something new that's going to happen today that they're going to say, hey, I feel uncomfortable, but I'm going to step in. A lot of people go like, what's the number one step you have to do? Number one is make sure everyone is deeply connected to your mission. Everybody overlooks this. They overlook it and they think, I'm the leader of this company. I know what our mission is and the difference that we're making in the world. The person who's a few layers down in an organizational chart, they don't have that same feeling and knowledge. And so in the submarine force, we had 130 crew members on the submarine. There was never any confusion by anyone about what mission we were on. And knowing what mission we were on, we all understood deeply the difference that we were making. And then we understood what our specific role was. And we understand what others' role was, others people's roles were. And that allowed us to establish tremendous amounts of accountability and trust. But the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure people are deeply connected to your mission. Now I'll go a little bit deeper here. Typically the mission statement's 32 words long. No one can repeat it. And we've done this study with over 500 companies. David, we asked the leadership team, they're in a room together. We have them write down on a piece of paper without talking to one another and looking at anything. We say, write down the mission statement. Over 500 teams we've done this with. What percentage of teams, what do you think the alignment is to the mission? Over 500 teams we've done this with. Just the top leadership team. What do you think the percentage alignment is?
Oh, I'd be surprised if it was as high as 20, to be honest.
3%.
Yeah.
That's your leadership team.
Yeah.
You might together be connected to where the CEO is of that team, and they feel the mission statement. But you have to, when it goes out, think about it going out 3% aligned. The message is going out to everyone else in the company. It's going out, not in a common way. So everyone has this different feeling and of what the mission statement is. So don't overlook this as a leader. So I know you talked about, hey, what does it look like for leadership development? You want people to want to learn, to be put in situations and to get through challenges. Make sure they understand how what they're doing is making a difference in the world. So that is number one. Number two is once you've done that, then people are going to want to be more involved in decision-making. They're going to want to take on more responsibility. And that's where we look at individual readiness. And it's about, for us in the submarine force, and I say this to companies, is you have to have your own internal university. How are you training people? And then how are you training people? And then after you've trained them a second time, how are you training them a third time? And it's this combination of training that's done by, reading or whiteboard, but most of the training today is on the job training. And that's what we did in the submarine force. And that's what Gen Y and Gen Z really loves. So the second piece is if you want to push decision-making down, you have to have people who care about their job. They're going to go like, hey, I want to take on that decision and I want to be able to do that. Now, the biggest challenge we see here with leaders is that they want to push decision-making down. They're not exactly sure how to do that. And what I would share with you is that the best way for me to explain this to you is if you've ever taught a person how to ride a bicycle, that's how you start with when you push decision-making down. Now, I didn't take my kids and put them on a 10-speed on a downhill to start riding a bike. They were on a bike. They had the training wheels. They had all the stuff on their elbows and arms, and they got balance and they got a little confidence. And we took the training wheels off and I ran behind her as the quote unquote leader, as my father, as a father, I ran behind her and held the seat and helped her with that. And then as she looked at me, as I let go of the seat, she's like, are you still holding on to the seat? And I was like, yes, and then I stopped and I said, hey, I wasn't holding on to the seat. Then she took off. And so people are going to be afraid to make decisions if you've always made the decision. And so start off with things that are really small and then build as you go. Unbelievable what happens when someone gets a little bit of confidence, and that little bit of confidence then has them wanting to step into the next piece. And then it's just about providing, again, that leadership development and training and doing that on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you mentioned confidence there, again, thinking back to your story, that moment of getting back on the horse straight away as well. I think that's something else and again, it's about that kind of letting go of control a little bit, isn't it? Like if you've given someone the opportunity and they made the wrong decision in your eyes or whatever, and the outcome's not been quite right, the temptation is to say, right, well, you stuffed that up. I'm not going to let you do that again.
I'll just take it back. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But again, I think that's another moment, isn't it, where your leadership is being tested. And
yes.
You've got to just let them try again. Like obviously go through why it went wrong and how to do it differently next time. But
we talked about in the business versus on the business. What we find is a lot of leaders of businesses, sometimes they're working 70, 80% in the business. The other time they're working on the business. So when someone comes to you, David, and says, I don't know whether we should go with option A or B, the answer is option A. You just tell them option A. 6 seconds. It's the fastest thing because you got to get back into working in the business. You don't have the time, the patience to be a coach, a mentor, and a teacher. And one of the number one things you can do as a leader is if you really want to push decision-making down and you want to establish stronger relationships with people, if you're a leader today, every single answer to a question you get asked, it should be the same answer back. And if someone says, I don't know whether we should go with option A or B, I don't say, hey, it's option A and let them go. I ask them back, what do you think? It's the number one thing you can do is, what do you think? And then the person goes, hey, then that tells you as a leader, they're not confident in that decision. Maybe they're a little scared. They're going to say the wrong thing to you, or they don't know the factors behind it. So you would then say, as a leader, and you have to have time to do this, you would say, what are the factors you take into account to make that decision? If you know there's 4 and they tell you 3, you would tell them the 4th one, but then you don't say that's why it's option A. As a leader, you pause and you say, knowing those are the 4 factors, what decision should we make? And they say option A, and then you say, fantastic. In the future, if it's less than $75, I want you to make that decision every single day. If it's above it, just come to me with what your thoughts are. That is true leadership today. You can't do any of that if you're working 80% in the business and don't have time, like 6 seconds, tell someone, 3 or 4 minutes to actually transfer your decision-making down. So a great tool that we teach leaders, and you can use this today. Someone asks you a question, anything, you just ask them a question back. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I love it. You're right. It's the best way to deal with that kind of scenario. You do have to get over, if you're like me though, where you're brought up being told it's rude to answer a question with a question. You got to kind of get over that. But
yeah. Well, if you ask it with, well, what do you think, David?
Yeah.
Someone's not going to step in it. What I found in my experience is that 80% of the time I know it's option A. 20% of the time there's an option C that I never thought of. It was way better than I thought. And that's where you have to get to today. You have to feel comfortable going, like saying, hey, what do you think? And because when you ask that question, then you get to understand what's their matrix of decision-making that's happening inside of them. So.
Absolutely. And you're so right. Like those option C's and option D, E, and F and all the others, like all those things that you'd never thought of. I mean, that's the beauty of this approach, because if you did it the other way and just immediately give them the answer, you've missed out on all those possible better alternatives that you personally didn't think of.
One other thing just to add is, as a leader, when you ask them that question, what do you think? They're like, oh my gosh, like Mark actually cares about what I think.
Yeah.
And number 2 is it's called guided decision-making. And with just asking, what do you think, and going all the way, the number 1 rule in guided decision-making for anyone who's here, you can never tell them the answer. You have to guide them with a series of questions. And I shared an example of that. The other thing you get to do is you get to go like, David, that was a fantastic answer. You don't say, hey, I thought that too. And you go, that's and then you recognize them like, hey, and then you build their confidence. And then they're like, I'm going to get back on that bike again. You know what I mean? So, So you get to recognize a person right after that. And that continues to build their confidence and also bind them that, hey, you valued or are grateful for what they just did.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great point. Right. So keeping an eye on the time, let's move on to the next question. So there's been quite a lot of studies in recent years looking at things like workforce engagement and happiness at work and things like that. And I think off the top of my head, I think the figures for engagement in the workplace or staff engagement, it was less than 20%. I think the US was slightly better than the UK. We were like 17 or 18%, and you guys were maybe 20, 21, something like that. And I think that sort of speaks to this parallel issue around dysfunctional workplaces and team cultures. I mean, why do you think that is so widespread? And also, like, is it widespread, or is this one of these myths of the modern workplace? What do you think?
I've been following Gallup employee engagement since 2000. I mean, it's the gold standard for engagement, and it sort of goes up and down. The latest study, it just ticked back up a little bit. For me, what was really concerning was peeling back the information that Gen Z and Gen Y, even though it was a 3% drop just previously, Gen Z and Gen Y dropped 4 and 5%. So the future of our workforce is the least engaged. I think I'm going to go back to this. I'm just going to hammer it again. They don't feel connected, like they're making a difference in the world. And so Gallup also came out with a really powerful thing that I share with leaders is, if an employee feels that they've been in one meaningful conversation in the week, the level of engagement of that employee is just about 80%. And here's the kicker. That's whether they are working fully in the office, whether they're working hybrid, or they're working fully remote. And so you as the leader, you have to help create a structure and have a set of habits and routines that help to create at least one meaningful conversation a week. And we just went through one, asking them a question back, then recognizing them for the great work that they did, allowing them to lead a situation. Like one meaningful conversation a week with your people. And that's the goal that you should look towards. Are the statistics correct? I think they are correct. And, one of the things that we have to do every single day as leaders is we are the ones who are responsible for our culture. It's not like you step on a scale and you go like, hey, it's fixed and I don't have to do anything else about it. It's like, hey, if you eat junk food 24/7, your weight's going to balloon. If you work out, it's going to go down. And so every single day, you can't just say, I stepped on the scale like 3 years ago and our engagement level is this. I mean, every single day, you're responsible for driving that.
Yeah, I totally agree. The other statistic that I didn't mention as well, which is climbing, I think, is the opposite end of that, the actively disengaged, the ones who are literally like working against the organization. Yeah. And that seems to be growing, and that feels like it's probably the most concerning part of it all. But yeah, I mean, you're so right about culture. And the thing with that in any organization is it's going to happen either way, right? There will be some culture of some kind. So if you're the leader and you're not paying attention to it, you're not trying to impact it, drive it, maintain it, you're just letting it happen. You've got no, and I mean, we've all seen the damages of toxic culture, I'm sure, particularly, I mean, the work you've done with turnaround businesses, I'm sure you've encountered a few yourself.
Yeah, David, you're 100% correct. Look, the culture's going to happen. Put your hand on the wheel of it. Help drive it.
Excellent. Okay, so we've covered quite a few of the big themes on leadership, I think. So I'm going to skip some of these questions.
Sure.
But I will ask you, what's the biggest leadership lesson that you've taken away from your whole career so far?
My biggest lesson is that in working over the past 35 years in the nuclear submarine force, as a turnaround CEO, as a husband and a father, I believe these three things deeply. Number one is we all want to be connected to something bigger than ourselves. I think that's deep inside every single one of us. So as a leader, just know that sits there. Number two is we all crave simple, meaningful messages. So you got to make your message simple and clear, and you have to be consistent over and over and over again. You'll be consistent when, as you're walking up to someone, you overhear the two people you're walking up to say, oh my gosh, here comes David. He's going to talk about that mission statement again. Like, I'm going to that's when you know you've talked about it and it's consistent a lot. And then the third thing is we love autonomy and we love being recognized by people. So I think I share that with you. That is one thing that people want to belong to something bigger than themselves. It sits inside every single person. That's one. Number two is you have to view everyone in your organization as a leader. In the submarine force, we had 130 crew members on board, and everyone was viewed as a leader and everyone viewed themselves as a leader. Here's why. 800 feet below the surface of the ocean, when a fire breaks out in the engine room, the person responsible for putting out the fire, the person closest to the fire when the fire breaks out. So whether you'd been on board for 3 days and were 19 years old, or whether you'd been in the submarine force for 30 years, we all needed to know whether you could step in, step up, and lead. As a leader, the number one challenge is people go like, I'm not a leader. Oh, that's not me. Unalterable factory switch that I was born with. And what I found is that inside each and every single one of us is a leadership toolkit. And it turns out it's not what we don't have, it's what we don't use. So I think if I were to say two things that I've learned is that I believe everyone's has purpose deep inside and they want to be connected to that. And you can tap into that. Amazing. Your engagement level, we've seen engagement levels 80%. I mean, way, way higher than Gallup. And number two is I believe that everyone can be a leader. Just a core belief that I have.
I share that belief. That's why we're here.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, the question around purpose, I think that's one of these things that's getting, to me, that was one of the big reasons behind the Great Resignation, was that whole COVID moment of people being like, do you know what? There's more important things in life. I've had enough of this depressing job that I don't care about. I'm going to go and chase something I do care about. Oversimplifying it, I know. I'm sure there was more involved, but still.
Just one thing to add to that. When people did culture was at work. It was a location. Culture is not a location. It's the location of the person's heart, and wherever the person is, that's what you need to work towards. So when a person's working at home and they're fully engaged, it's because you have their heart. We were all doing activities at the office. And when the office, everyone had to go home, then it slowly degraded. And we're still using like, hey, can we get another beanbag chair? We can buy another ping pong table, whatever, And that stuff's not working. So I'll add to that. It did get, that got identified in COVID.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think if you're relying on location to drive your culture, then you're not really driving your culture.
Yep.
Yeah, isn't it? It does make me laugh. Everyone uses the same examples. It's the beanbag chairs, the ping pong tables, and the free pizza once a week. Like, is there some like bad management book out there that suggests these things? It's
yeah. It's so interesting. I see it too, but I think that's the default thing. Like, hey, either I gotta spend time asking someone a question back and talking them through, or I can buy a ping pong table. I got to recognize someone. Hey, that's their job, And so you have to be able to coach, mentor, teach today. And it was just easy. Like we heard this company did this and all this stuff. So yes, I think there's a bad manager book that's out there.
Yeah. I want to know who did it first as well. We'll never know, will we? But I'd love to know.
We won't. That'd be a great story. You should do something on that.
Yeah. The funniest bit of that is it probably worked for the first one who did it, and that's why everyone copied it. But anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think you may have already answered this, but I'm going to ask you anyway, just in case. Sure. What's been your best experience of being led?
The best experience in being led was in the submarine force. And it was just that story that I shared with you in my final qualification, that jam dive story. That was the best experience, because the captain, he could have just crapped on me in front of everyone, and everything that he did was intentional. Even when the submarine was going 40-degree down angle, I look back on it. He didn't say, hey, Mr. Koehler, it's a jam dive, right? He asked me a question. He goes, what are you going to do? He wanted to know like how I was going to react to that. And so I think every single thing about that was very intentional about being really a coach, a mentor, and a teacher. He brought me back to the back of the control room instead of having the message in front of everybody. He then, when we got back, he gave me control back, which shocked me, to say, hey, Mark's got to learn how to fail to success. And so I think it's that environment and that experience that I think about every single day when I'm talking with someone. Am I making this a more meaningful conversation, or am I making it meaningless? And I think it's in the back of my mind all the time. How am I helping to, when we leave this conversation today, I hope, David, that I've made you a little bit better. And I hope that the people who are listening right now are made a little better. And that's everything. It's about serving. And even in really high performance environments, I think that's the greatest example I've had of being led, because then I took that and I mimicked it throughout my entire career. Helped me to be successful as a turnaround CEO, helped me to be successful as a submarine officer. And as a husband and father, the hardest job ever, leadership-wise.
Yeah. And I think from the story as well, that what makes it even more impressive is the commitment to following through on it. Like even while the submarine's like hurtling towards the floor, he's still just asking you the coaching question. Really impressive stuff.
And then just to take $1 billion sub, to come back around again and go, Mr. Koehler, you have the con, and to go all ahead flank. I'm looking at him going like, what? You're going to take $1 billion submarine and a crew through this again? And it was his commitment to developing me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And the confidence in you as well, I guess.
Yes. That's what he was telling me by saying and doing that again.
Yeah. Very cool. So I think I already know what your answer is going to be to the next one. Let's see. I should write it down.
Maybe I should shock you and just say something totally opposite. That's
Feel free. So the question is, if you could start your career over again, what would you do differently?
I'd get my thigh bone reduced 3/8 of an inch. So, that's a great question. I have this belief that, everything happens for a certain reason, and really more of the stoic and I lean into my faith on that. So everything happened for a reason. But if I were to look back, on it, it would just be to really trust in earlier on, trust in people and view them as leaders. And once you view a person as a leader, it changes everything about them. Then I think about you as not only just like an asset of the company. I think of you as like, hey, how do I pour into you? And so I think if I were to go back earlier, getting to that point, I wish I would have gotten there earlier. And because that's the number one ingredient of all the teams that I've ever been on, elite level teams, is that everyone is a leader and everyone views himself as a leader. So I think getting there faster. I wish I would have done that, because I could have impacted more lives as I got towards that point.
That's a very thoughtful answer. Thank you.
What did you think I was going to say?
So there's usually like two camps in this question, I find. There's the one that I'm probably in, because it's a bit of a cop-out, which is to say nothing. Because if I changed anything, I wouldn't end up where I am today, and I like where I am. Which, is true, but it's also, I think it's a bit of a cop-out as an answer. And I can say that because it's my answer. And then there's the other camp where like, I'd change everything. I hated all of it. I wouldn't do any of that again, and so on, which again feels a little bit extreme.
Yeah.
So the answer's like yours, whereas there's that one focus moment where if I could just like adjust this a little bit, it would make everything else the same but better. If you get my meaning. So yeah, really good answer. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I've got one more question, but I'm going to add an extra one.
Sure.
Because I feel like we've not talked much about the work you did as a CEO turning around businesses.
Sure.
So the question I'd love to get into is, did you see like a common theme around what had, I don't want to say gone wrong, but the reason why you were needed in these businesses?
Yeah, just as I was never, as a turnaround CEO, I was never brought into a situation like, Mark, team is running great, and we just need you to get us 1% better. I always went in as like, hey, we got 9 months, we're going to run out of cash. Either we got to try to find funding. We've been in business for 4 generations. Great grandmothers counting on you, Mark, to help turn the situation around, to shift down to Johnny Jr. So it was always very dire situations. That's what made me faster look at using the submarine force, because, I had, again, nothing to lose or everything to lose if I didn't change something. So when I went into organizations, I think the biggest challenge was that people were not connected to the mission. I'm just going to share with you a quick story. I go into a wire manufacturing company, specialty wire manufacturing company, and I find out that 14% of the wire is being returned every single month. Company's on the brink of going under. Company's been around for 3 generations. Now, this is specialty wire. This isn't wire that is bought at Home Depot or Lowe's. I don't know what the equivalent is in Britain, but it's not like someone returns the wire, gets put on the shelf, and then someone else can buy it. You had to scrap it. And so I can remember looking at this and going like, how do we fix this? I looked at the operators. We had a huge manufacturing facility. I looked at the operators. There was no common process we were using to manufacture the wire. So we couldn't get any quality control of like, hey, what's working and what's not working. So I go, brilliant. I'm a master black belt in Lean Six Sigma. This is me as the leader. So I gather all the operators in a room one day. We're in there for 3 hours with the head of manufacturing, and we work together. We produce this beautiful 9-step manufacturing process. Train on the process, put it on the machines. And I'm like, In 2 months, it's going to drop to less than 5%. Only drops to 12%. I'm sitting there frustrated because I know the process is really strong. I'm walking through the plant one day trying to figure it out. And I look over and I see one of the operators producing this super thin piece of wire. And just out of curiosity, David, I go over to him. I go, hey, where's that wire going? And he goes, I don't know. Call over the head of manufacturing. Oh, that's going in a pacemaker. It's going to go in someone's heart. The operator goes, oh. Now my 9-step process isn't working, but I got a reaction out of the operator. So me and the head of manufacturing, we go over to the other way and we go, hey, where's that wire going to another operator? He goes, I don't know. Oh, that's going in the Mars rover mission. Like, this is the type of stuff that they were producing. We went around to all the operators that day. None of them knew where the wire was going. The next day we went around, 40% knew. The next day we went around, either they got interested in it or they knew I was going to come by and ask them what wire was, and 100% knew. That's the only step we changed in the entire process. The number one step was, where is the wire going? We changed it from a 9-step process to a 10-step process. Only thing we changed, in the next 2 months, returns dropped to 3%. What we had done, and I overlooked this as a leader, what we had done is we intentionally had taken the lowest levels of the organization were disconnected. They just thought I had a job, I was making a piece of wire. No, you're helping extend someone's life with a pacemaker. No, you are helping innovation and exploration to happen as it goes to Mars. There were these unbelievable stories of where the wire was actually going. And when we intentionally did that as leaders, we intentionally said, here's how what you're doing connects up to making a difference in the world. That's when everything changed. And so the number one thing, if you're a leader, don't overlook this. And this is our number one step in the process. Make sure everyone knows the mission statement. That's one. Number two is make sure they feel the mission statement. And when they feel the mission statement, that's when it's in their heart, and they can be anywhere in the world and they can go, I love my job and I love what I do because I make a difference in the world. So we call it Connect the Wire Stories. And if you think you can't create a Connect the Wire Stories, we did some work with McCain Food Industries, $11 billion. You know what their product is? Potatoes. That's all they do is potatoes. And they were creating Connect the Potato Stories. So it's an extremely powerful thing that you can do. And you will find out people who are really passionate about that. You'll find out people who aren't, but then they should go find a place where they feel deeply connected to the wire. So I think going in as a turnaround CEO, it's the number one thing I did. I got really clear on our mission so everyone knew it. But then I go like, hey, even accounts payable, how do you connect the potato or connect the wire story? It's a very simple thing you do, very powerful.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubting how powerful that is. The context, knowing why this is happening, why this job needs to be done, why your specific part of it matters and how it fits into the whole mission of the organization. It just makes such a massive difference to all kinds of things. I mean, the things you've been talking about, but also like how well you sleep that night because you know you've made a difference doing something that mattered. Even if it only mattered to that company, like it mattered.
Yeah, they go home and they go, how was work? Oh, yeah, it was okay. Oh, I was producing wire that's going to go in a robotic arm for someone. Yeah. You know, what we did, that process was fantastic, David. What we did is we first opened up their hearts, then they invited the discipline of the process in. We always start with like, hey, let's do the process and everything. Man, when people care about their job, then they'll do the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I get so frustrated with leaders who say, just do as you're told. No, right? Tell them why.
Yes, the why behind it.
Excellent. You're full of great stories. I feel like we could go for another 2 hours. I could happily listen for that long, but I don't want to be selfish and monopolize your time. So one question left. This is usually my favorite one. Okay, so it's called Leadership Heroes.
Leadership Heroes.
So if you had to pick one person, but it could be anyone you could think of. So it could be alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious, if you like as well. But it's got to be someone who, in your opinion, would perfectly embody leadership. So who would that be for you and why?
Yeah. Okay, it'd be my dad. The reason is my dad came over from Germany. He came over with nothing in his pocket, settled in Rochester. He actually played in the Bundesliga soccer. He played soccer in the Bundesliga. It wasn't called the Bundesliga at that time. It was in the 1960s. And he came over. He played for the Rochester Lancers of the old NASL. They were making $5 a game. He was sleeping on a floor. At that time, he met he met his wife, my mom. And he worked really hard. He had that really strong work ethic. And it was about showing up every single day and that strong work ethic that really got instilled into me. And I tap into every single day is, hey, it's not working out today. There's a struggle today. Just get back up. I mean, there's a great song by gentleman named Bailey Zimmerman, and it's called Backup Plan. And it just came out, and it's like your backup plan is getting back up when you get knocked down. And so I got taught that by my dad, and that's been for me the most powerful. And he combined that with empathy. He was a young child when the World War II was going on, and he saw some, like as a 5-year-old, things that he saw, and he had this tremendous empathy for people. So it was that combination of those two things that I appreciate that he taught me.
Yeah, $5 for a game of football as a professional. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Some of the things they get paid today pales.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
$5 doesn't buy you a half a hot dog.
Yeah. Well, I think they lose the empathy with the amount of money they get paid now. So,
yeah.
You know, it's swings and roundabouts, as they say.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, great choice. Quite a few people choose a parent or a family member for this question. It's probably in the top 5 answers, and I think that's partly because for most of us, that's the first leaders we encounter in life, isn't it? Is our parents, and then they're hopefully always there. So it's, I mean, I love hearing those stories because that is that personal connection again as well, isn't it? That's so powerful, so important, so meaningful. And I say this every time somebody chooses a parent or someone like this. Much as I love talking about like figures from history and getting into that real academic exercise of did they, didn't they, what do they think, how would they do it today, all of that sort of stuff. It's really interesting, but it's not as good. It's not as meaningful. It doesn't matter as much as when it's someone you actually know, have lived with, have experienced their leadership for yourself. So thank you for sharing that as well.
You're welcome. You just sort of opened up my eyes too. I always know the importance and the power of the role that you have as a father and as a parent. And, sometimes, you say, hey, what would you do different parenting wise? I think I did a lot of good, but there are some things I go, hey, I probably would have done some things differently. But yeah, it is the most important role that we all have.
Amazing. Last extra little question I will ask you: if anyone in the audience would like to learn more about you, where can they go? What's the website and so on?
Yes. So I have Lead with Purpose. And I know you'll include these in the links, but leadwithpurpose.com. And then also Marc Koehler Speaks. I do keynote speaking. But you can catch me on Instagram at Marc Koehler Speaks, and Facebook, Marc Koehler Speaks, LinkedIn, all of them. And if you go to our site, we have a lot of great materials that are free that you can start looking at your own leadership style. We have a readiness test that you can take. It's free. So you can see how you can operate in this dynamically changing and disruptive world. We'll include all of those. But I love talking about leadership. I could talk to you, David, too. I think, I could talk to you for the next 5 hours about it, too. I'm so passionate about
it. Yeah, likewise. Well, come back anytime.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Amazing. All right. Well, that's it. That's more than we've got time for. So thank you again so much for your time, Marc. It's been great to meet you. Really enjoyed this conversation, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah. Make it a great day too. Thank you for having me.
Marc, thank you so much for your time today. What a great conversation. Some brilliant lessons there and very entertaining and educational stories as well. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing those with us. Listener or viewer, if you would like to learn more about Marc, do check those links down in the show notes. go and visit his website, find him on socials, reach out. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you and learn more things. And if you are new to leadership, you're feeling a bit like a fish out of water, you're finding it more difficult than you expected. Maybe you're second guessing yourself, or you're worried that your new team doesn't quite see you as the leader just yet. Then come and join us at the Integrity Leaders online community for new leaders just like you. It's a private, supportive space where new managers, first-time leaders, founders of businesses, and even solopreneurs can get real about leadership. You will gain confidence, clarity, and access to a group of people who understand exactly what you're going through because they are there or have been there themselves. So visit www.leadingwithintegrity.co.uk and hit that green button on the homepage to go to the sign-up form. Or if you want to have a chat about it, learn more before you join or commit to anything, find me on LinkedIn. Again, you'll find that URL down there in the show notes. Drop me a quick message and let's talk it through. The important thing is you don't have to figure it all out on your own. And that's all I have time for this week. Thank you again so much for being with us. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and do join us again next week when I'll be chatting with my next guest, career development and leadership coach, Annabelle Smith. So I look forward to seeing you there. And until then, as always, be a leader, not a boss.